There is a place in the Persian Gulf where geography becomes a weapon. Not a metaphor, a literal weapon, shaped by tectonic plates over millions of years, sharpened by human ambition over decades, and pointed at the jugular of the global economy with surgical precision. 21 miles of open water separating two coastlines, 20% of the world's oil supply squeezed through that gap every single day. Tankers the length of aircraft carriers, riding low under millions of barrels of crude, inching past in the dark like elephants tiptoeing through a kitchen. Close that gap, and you don't just stop the oil, you stop the world. Covert Island sits at the eastern mouth of that gap. 4 square miles of limestone, salt flat, and elevated ridge. Seemingly nothing. A rock the ocean forgot to swallow. But position is everything in warfare, and Covert Island has the most dangerous position on Earth. From its highest ridge, a man with binoculars can read the names painted on the hulls of passing supertankers. From a hardened missile battery on its eastern slope, those same tankers aren't just readable, they're killable. For 18 months, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had been building precisely that capability. Quietly, methodically, with help they were never supposed to have. At 2 a.m. on a moonless March night, the United States Marine Corps decided the construction project was finished, and so was the island's independence. Part 1. The island that swallowed everything. Walk the history of Covert Island, and you walk through a masterclass in strategic patience. The IRGC didn't arrive with fanfare. They arrived with construction crews, earth movers that worked at night, supply barges that transferred cargo under thermal deflection tarps. Over 18 months, what had been a weather station and a small patrol base was quietly transformed into something that changed the threat calculus of the entire strait. 2 batteries of domestically manufactured College-Far's anti-ship missiles, supersonic, sea-skimming, with terminal guidance capable of defeating basic ship defenses, were buried in hardened shelters carved directly into the island's limestone core. Their targeting radars occupied elevated positions on the ridge, able to reach over the horizon and paint targets 60 kilometers out. A mortar complex on the reverse slope was pre-registered on every navigable approach to the island's 3 beaches. New barracks housed a reinforced garrison of over 200 fighters, many of them veterans of naval operations who had spent years studying American amphibious doctrine specifically to defeat it. But the most dangerous piece of the puzzle wasn't Iranian. Signals intelligence first flagged the arrivals in the 3rd month of construction. 18 individuals traveling on civilian documentation, disembarking from a commercial vessel in stages to avoid creating a large personnel signature. Their backgrounds, assembled painstakingly from intelligence files across multiple allied services, told the story clearly. Electronic warfare specialists, radar integration engineers, and, most significantly, 2 officers with documented experience operating Russian export integrated air defense systems in previous theaters. They weren't there for the view. The system they assembled on Covert Island's northern plateau represented the cutting edge of what a motivated state actor could export while maintaining deniability. Low-altitude engagement capability, data link integration between radar nodes that allowed any single radar to cue any single weapon system, even if the primary sensor had been destroyed. Passive infrared tracking that could operate without emitting a single detectable radar wave. On paper, it was the nightmare scenario. An island fortress with layered air defense, shore-based anti-ship missiles, prepared beach defenses, and technical advisors from a major power who had specifically designed the system to defeat American aircraft. On paper, American satellite reconnaissance had been watching every bolt go into the ground. Part 2. The force that sleeps in the water. 50 miles offshore, the USS Kessler, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship reconfigured for expeditionary strike operations, sat in international waters with her lights dimmed and her emissions controlled. Below her flight deck, in the carefully organized chaos of her hangar bay and well deck, the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit was preparing for something the American military hadn't attempted in earnest in over 40 years. A forced entry onto a defended shore against a modern military opponent. The scale of preparation was staggering. Every pilot in the F-35B squadron had flown the mission profile 17 times in simulation before the deployment, and 3 times in live training exercises against sophisticated Red Force defenders. The air plan had been written, rewritten, war-gamed against Red Force planners who were explicitly told to find every weakness and rewritten again. Target folders for each identified position on Covert Island were updated within hours of the most recent satellite pass. The infantry battalion that would go ashore had spent 2 weeks running mock assaults against a beach replica constructed on a Qatari training range. Every building cluster on Covert had been reconstructed from overhead imagery and assault rehearsed until the squad leaders could navigate the village in darkness without maps. The most unconventional element was in the well deck. 4 M1A3 Abrams main battle tanks, heavier than anything a standard MEU would typically carry, requiring careful weight distribution across the ship's hull, sat secured in the darkness, fully crewed, engines ready for 30-second startup. The planning cell had argued hard for them. The island's terrain channeled attackers into predictable corridors. Without armor to breach the garrison's prepared strongpoints, the infantry fight could turn into a bloody room-by-room grind that would cost far more Marine lives than the mission could afford. The tanks were approved. The operation was designated Iron Tide. Part 3. The man who thought he was ready. Major Cyrus Sadeghi had commanded the Covert garrison for 5 months. He was not an ideologue. He was a professional. A serious military officer who had studied his enemy with genuine intellectual rigor, who had read translated American doctrine and watched every available video of Marine amphibious exercises, and who had concluded, based on the evidence available to him, that the island was defendable at a cost that would make the operation politically untenable for Washington. He believed 3 things with certainty. He believed the air defense system would exact a serious price from any aircraft that attempted to operate over the island. He believed the beach approaches, mined in the surf zone, covered by overlapping fire, observed from the ridge, would slow an amphibious assault long enough for reinforcement or political intervention. And he believed that the presence of the Russian technical team on the island created a political tripwire that the Americans would hesitate to cross. Senior advisor Nikolai Petrov, the Russian team leader, had reinforced all 3 beliefs. Petrov had spent his career studying American amphibious operations. He had written a classified assessment arguing that 2 decades of land warfare in Afghanistan and Iraq had hollowed out the institutional knowledge required for contested forcible entry. His air defense system, he told Sadeghi, was specifically engineered to deny the low-altitude operating environment that American vertical lift aviation depended on. Neither man knew that the Americans had precise coordinates on every radar node, every missile shelter,
every bunker, and every command post on the island. Neither man had been told about a specific intelligence penetration of the construction supply chain that had allowed American technical teams to embed monitoring devices during the island's construction phase. When the first anti-radiation missiles arrived at 2:04 a.m., the radar network that Petrov had spent 8 months building went dark in less than 6 minutes. In his bunker, as the emergency lighting flickered on and the communications board showed fault after fault, Petrov said something in Russian that his translator later rendered as, "They knew. They knew all of it." He was not wrong. Part 4. The longest 11 minutes. The F-35Bs came out of the darkness at 2:41 a.m., like ghosts that had forgotten how to haunt quietly. 14 aircraft and 2 strike packages, riding above 12,000 feet, invisible to the degraded radar network below. Each pilot had a target folder built from 18 months of satellite imagery, signals intelligence, and, though they didn't know the source, the monitoring data from inside the island's own construction supply chain. They didn't need their own radars. They flew passively, tracked by data-linked sensors from a distant aerial platform, and released their weapons from beyond any remaining gun or missile threat. The GBU-62 Storm Seeker small-diameter bombs were the main instrument. New enough that Covert's defenders had never encountered them in a live environment. Autonomous terminal guidance. Millimeter-wave radar seeker that could distinguish a vehicle's thermal signature from background clutter at 2 kilometers altitude. Data link that allowed pilots to redirect them after release if intelligence was updated in real time. The College FARS missile shelters were first. The hardened concrete, designed to survive anything short of a direct hit, had not been designed to survive 2 simultaneous direct hits on the same reinforced point, which is what it received.
Both shelters collapsed inward. Secondary explosions from the ready-round magazines created fireballs visible on the Kessler's bridge cameras 50 miles away. Then the mortar park. Then the communications nodes. Then allocated 5 weapons instead of the standard 3 because the planning cell believed in redundancy, the Russian air defense complex on the northern plateau. Petrov watched his primary radar vanish through a slit window. He watched the launcher moment vanish in a column of orange fire. He watched the engagement control vehicle, the brain of the entire network, simply cease to exist in a thunderclap that shook the bunker walls. 11 minutes after the first weapon release, the guns went quiet. Covert Island had gone from a fortress to a collection of expensive wreckage in less time than it takes to watch a television news segment. Part 5. The Water, the Dark, and the Roar. 22 a.m. The well deck flooded. The sound of 4 LCAC hovercraft spinning up their gas turbines is not something that can be described adequately in words. It is a physical experience, a wall of sound that bypasses the ears and speaks directly to the chest cavity, a subsonic declaration that something enormous and implacable is about to move. Lieutenant Commander Yolanda Pierce piloted the 2nd LCAC in the formation. She had made beach landings in training more times than she could remember. She had never made one while tracers were crossing her bow. The approach took 9 minutes across open water. 9 minutes to watch the island grow from a dark smudge to a visible coastline to a specific beach with specific features she had memorized from overhead imagery. 9 minutes while the remaining IRGC defenders, suppressed but not broken, still fighting, still human beings who had chosen to die at their posts if necessary, fired everything they had left at the approaching formation. Most of it missed. Some of it didn't. 15 seconds, her crew chief called. The LCAC hit the beach at 43 knots. The bow ramp dropped. The M1A3 tank in her hold rolled forward and off the ramp before the craft had fully stopped, its tracks biting into wet sand, its turret already traversing toward the first identified threat. The crew hadn't waited for permission. The crew didn't need permission. They had trained for this moment until the muscle memory was deeper than conscious thought. The tank's first round fired 22 seconds after beach touchdown. Around her, the Marines flowed off the ramps like water finding the path of least resistance. Not panicked, not reckless, but purposeful and fast, moving to the cover positions they had rehearsed 10,000 times on a training beach in Qatar, finding the terrain features they had memorized from overhead imagery.
doing exactly what they had been trained to do under circumstances designed to make training irrelevant. The beachhead was declared secure at 4:51 a.m. American casualties in the landing itself: 2 Marines wounded, neither critically. One LCAC had taken a rocket-propelled grenade impact on its skirt structure that required it to limp back to the ship for repairs. The crew was uninjured. The cost of putting 400 Marines and 4 main battle tanks on a defended beach in under 30 minutes? 2 wounded, 1 damaged hovercraft. The island's defenders had spent 18 months preparing for this moment. It lasted 29 minutes. Part 6. The Inland Fire. What followed was not clean. War is never clean, and the fighting that consumed the next 4 hours on Covert Island was war in its most immediate and personal form. Not missiles from 50 miles away, not algorithms making decisions about targets, but human beings in close proximity making split-second choices about life and death in buildings, stairwells, and alleyways that neither side had expected to become battlegrounds.
The IRGC defenders who had survived the pre-strike and the beach landing retreated into the built-up area surrounding the garrison compound. They fought with skill and ferocity that surprised the Marines who had been told in pre-operation briefs that morale might be brittle. It was not brittle. These were men who had chosen this posting, knowing it made them targets, who had trained for this specific scenario, who believed in what they were defending, regardless of what anyone outside the island thought of their cause. Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole, leading a fire team through the ground floor of the Garrison Administration Building, would later tell his debriefer that the IRGC soldier who nearly killed him had done everything right. Cover, movement, patience. He'd waited in a position that should have been safe until Cole's team was committed to a course of action they couldn't reverse, then opened fire from 12 feet. Cole survived because his Marines had drilled for exactly that scenario. The IRGC soldier did not survive because Cole's Marines had drilled for exactly that scenario. 81Z Viper attack helicopters orbited continuously overhead throughout the inland fight, available on call, but requiring positive target identification before every engagement, a constraint that frustrated ground commanders in the moment, but prevented the kind of fratricide and collateral damage that would have turned a tactical success into a strategic embarrassment. Forward Air Controller Corporal James Ito directed 9 attack runs over 4 hours. Each call required him to give a target description, a distance and direction from his own position, confirmation that no friendly forces were in the engagement zone, and a specific weapons request. Each call required him to trust that the pilot overhead could see what he was describing. Each call was a collaboration between a man on the ground who could smell the gunpowder and a pilot 300 feet overhead who could see the thermal signatures. 8 of the 9 runs delivered effects within 10 meters of the intended target. The 9th run was waved off when Ito identified a potential friendly force in the engagement zone. The pilot responded immediately, broke off, and began a re-attack profile before being stood down when the threat dissipated on its own. By 8:30 a.m., the garrison compound had fallen. By 8:45 a.m., Nikolai Petrov and 11 surviving Russian technicians emerged from their hardened bunker with their hands raised. Petrov's first words to the Marine officer who accepted his surrender, according to the official record, were delivered in English and were calm, professional, and entirely without self-pity. "I would like to speak with the Russian consulate. I understand this may take some time." It was not the statement of a man who had been surprised by what had happened. It was the statement of a man who had lost a professional contest and was prepared to accept the consequences. Part 7. The Uninvited Audience. 38 miles to the southeast, a vessel bearing the markings of the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy had been on station since before the first missile fired. Her crew had the best seats to the worst show they had ever attended. Commander Wei Changming had positioned his signals intelligence ship carefully.
outside territorial waters, outside any declared security zone, in the unambiguous legal territory of international waters. His mission was observation and collection. Document the American operation in granular detail for analysis by PLA assessment teams who would spend months examining every tactical decision, every communications pattern, every piece of equipment used. He had not expected what came next. At 7:15 a.m., a P-8 Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft conducted a low-altitude pass directly overhead. Close enough to read the aircraft's markings from the bridge. Close enough to hear the engine noise rattle the windows. Close enough to be unmistakable. At 7:38 a.m., an F-35B transited his position at minimum safe altitude, legal by a margin, but communicative in a language that needed no translation. At 7:41 a.m., the radio crackled on bridge-to-bridge channel 16. The voice was professionally neutral. The message was not. The vessel was observing active combat operations. It was requested to withdraw to a distance of 100 miles. Compliance was expected within 20 minutes. Wei Changming asked for clarification on what expected meant in this context. He received no clarification. He looked at his political officer. His political officer looked at him. 20 years of naval service passed between them in that look. The weight of orders, of protocols, of a calculation that neither of them had the authority to make unilaterally. Then Wei Changming picked up the ship's intercom and ordered his crew to bring her to flank speed on a course away from the island. He did not receive a second radio call. He had understood the first one perfectly. Part 8. The Tally and the Truth. By 10:47 a.m., Covert Island was under American military control. The final count, as assembled by Marine Corps operational record keepers in the days that followed. IRGC personnel, 189 killed in action, 88 captured, 31 status unknown. American losses, 11 Marines killed in action, 29 wounded. Of the wounded, 6 returned to duty within 48 hours. The rest were evacuated for treatment. Russian technicians, 7 killed during the pre-strike and initial landing phase. 12 captured, including Petrov, alive and uninjured. The operation's duration, from first weapon release to final surrender, 6 hours and 25 minutes.
The intelligence haul from the destroyed Russian air defense site, technical documentation, maintenance records, partially intact component assemblies, was described by people with access to the full assessment as extraordinarily valuable. The word extraordinary in intelligence assessments is not used lightly. What the operation had demonstrated was not just capability. Capability is the easy part. Nations with sufficient resources can always buy capability. What it had demonstrated was integration, the ability to synchronize satellite intelligence, electronic warfare, precision strike, amphibious assault, armor, close air support, and real-time command decisions across multiple domains simultaneously, under combat conditions, against a prepared enemy, with a result that fell within the tolerance bands of the original plan. That kind of integration isn't purchased. It's built over years, through training, through doctrine, through the painful and expensive process of learning what doesn't work until what works becomes second nature. Epilogue. The revision. In the days that followed, the Secretary of Defense stood before cameras and spoke about freedom of navigation in measured, precise language designed to communicate without escalating. He confirmed the capture of 12 Russian nationals. He confirmed they were being treated in accordance with applicable international law. He confirmed that appropriate notifications had been made. A journalist asked about the Chinese naval vessel. He paused for exactly 2 seconds. All vessels in the operational area responded appropriately to U.S. Navy communications. 12 words. In the planning cells of a dozen different militaries on 4 continents, officers who had spent years arguing that American amphibious capability had been permanently degraded by 2 decades of land warfare pulled out their threat assessments and began making changes. The island had fallen. The fortress had been reduced to cataloged wreckage.
The advisors were in custody, and the world had watched. some from 8,000 miles away on news broadcasts, some from 38 miles away on a bridge rattled by a low-flying jet, and understood that the question was no longer whether America could still do this. The question was whether anyone could stop them. Disclaimer: this is a completely fictional military scenario created for defense analysis and educational storytelling. All characters, unit designations, specific island names, and events are invented or dramatized. Military platforms and general doctrinal concepts are referenced for educational context only. No real operation, real individual, or real geopolitical event is depicted or implied. Any DoD imagery used in associated productions is for illustrative purposes only and does not imply official endorsement.